Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tales of the Pod podcast. I'm Michaela, I'm your host.
And I'm your co-host, Nick. It's our first time on camera today.
Yes, this has been quite the process to get on camera.
Yes, it has been. Oh my god.
It's been a little bit of a learning curve trying to do all of this, but we're hoping that being on camera, you guys can see how much I talk with my hands and how many hats Nick gets to wear.
Yep,
so.
She talks with her hands quite a bit, so you guys will get to see that.
So we're still going to be putting out the audio version on Spotify and Apple Music every Monday, but we're hoping to get a YouTube channel up and running, and we'll put out a video version every week as well. I know sometimes I like to watch my podcast as well as listen to them. I just feel like I'm like hanging out with somebody, hanging out with my friends.
Sure.
And with us, I hope you just feel like you're hanging out, talking about some good horror movies.
Yep.
That's really our goal here.
That's our goal here.
So today's episode, I thought it would be cool to maybe touch on psychological horror movies.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like a subgenre of horror that's not really discussed a ton. Our goal with this episode is really to talk about movies that make you think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you watch them and then afterwards you're trying to Google a meaning or something and you're like, what the hell did I just watch? We picked some really complicated movies that even, like, we're trying to explain and we're trying to read about and we're like, these are really in-depth, intricate movies.
Yeah, so, it definitely is, like, with psychological horror, there's, I think, like kind of like you were saying, there's some that is just like, what am I watching? It makes no sense. So you're like looking up the endings and everything. And then there's another type where it's just like basically watching a character spiral, psychologically, whether it be like he's going crazy or he's dealing with something, some sort of mental issue or something like
and
that.
Sometimes it's the audience itself that's spiraling. Like we're watching it and we're spiraling out because we're seeing all these clues and we're seeing things and we're like, well, that doesn't make sense. And like what's the relevance to the plot? What does that mean? And psychological movies are almost scarier than like slasher movies that we touched on last week because it's somebody's psyche, it's somebody's mental health. So it's like if they're seeing things, it's like that's almost, to me, that's almost scarier.
Yeah, I think it makes the movie more interesting too. And you can't differentiate whether it's between like in his head or he's actually seeing it in real life, so that's kind of cool. And then, like, the other aspects of it, too, are really neat, like, for example, just, like, not, like, you as the viewer not being able to understand either what's going on, so that's kind of,
it's almost like fun. A higher level of horror, like, you're watching it, you're like, this is too much for me to even understand, like, this psychology is just next level.
Yeah, it's definitely like a niche, I think, subgenre of horror, but it's very cool, it's very fun.
Yeah, our goal is, obviously every horror movie can be defined as psychological because obviously there's some mental health to touch on with every horror movie ever.
Agreed, yeah.
But we're going for more specifically psychological. Either the character is spiraling out, there's some kind of deeper meaning to it, they're very hard to understand, and we're hoping to kind of dive into them and maybe pick them apart and make them easier to understand and just talk about them and how they interest us.
Right.
Bear with us with some of them because some of them are just like, what the hell? You're watching them and it's like, this happens, and that happens, and none of it correlates, so...
Yeah.
Bear with us, we're going to do our best.
Yeah, we're going to kind of be all over the place, I feel like.
This is definitely a topic that I think is interesting and fun to talk about.
Oh, for sure. Definitely one of my favorite subgenres, for sure. So, I guess... Yeah, I'll get started. The movie that I picked, one that comes to mind, is 1990's Jacob's Ladder.
It's a good movie.
Great movie. Very, kind of... What am I watching here?
I think that's the definition of like what the hell did I just watch?
Yeah, because it's definitely kind of confusing, and you don't really understand what's going on the whole entire movie.
And I feel like even at the end, it's not clearly laid out
what
happened.
Yeah. Well, you kind of interpret it. I guess maybe it's left up to viewers' interpretation or whatever.
And I think a lot of those movies are like that. A lot of these movies we picked are just kind of left up to the viewer to interpret.
Sure. But yeah, so basically it's Tim Robbins. He plays Jacob. He comes back from Vietnam, or you think he does. And stuff starts happening in his life that's very weird. He thinks he's getting chased by the government. He thinks there was some sort of like drug experiment done on him when he was over in Vietnam. And it's very like the whole time you're kind of agreeing with him. He's going down like each one of these trails trying to figure out who it might, what might be going on. But like at the same time, he's like slowly losing his mind too because he's starting to like see stuff and like stuff's just not making sense. He's having like weird like reactions with his body too and everything like that. And basically at the end of the movie, you realize he never actually made it home from Vietnam. He was still laying in the battlefield where where they were fighting at, basically. So basically what I think the whole story progressed to was Jacob was actually going through like the stages of dying, like, you know, looking into the future life, looking into his past life.
Acceptance.
It's kind of just like a movie about him dying, but it very creepy and very, very weird.
Very unsettling movie.
Yeah, you like I said, you definitely have to watch it to understand like what we're talking about with like him seeing stuff and you know, having stuff happen with his body and everything, and thinking he's being chased by the government.
Yeah, I mean, you truly empathize with him because you're like, oh, he's a veteran, he's coming home, all these things are happening to him, so you empathize with him, and I mean, I don't think anybody would put it past the U.S. government to do certain things on people. So,
right, and it kind of touches, too, on topics about, like, PTSD, which is,
I think that's the message of the movie, is PTSD, for sure.
I think it touches on that, and then it also kind of comes, you know, like, full circle, because Jacob's Ladder is a biblical story, if any of you guys are familiar with religion, so it's basically kind of relaying to that. A lot of there's biblical names in the movie and everything like that. Jacob's Ladder is the ladder from earth to heaven. And, you know, so that's...
Jacob was a biblical name.
Basically, that's what I think the director was kind of going for as well.
That makes
you know,
sense.
coming into like a biblical kind of view and like, you know, the going through purgatory, you know, into heaven. That's basically what he was seeing, was like he was in purgatory, basically. Yes. And then he finally, at the end of the movie, you see him and his son walking into heaven together, walking up the staircase, Jacob's Ladder. So...
It's a very sad movie.
Yeah, that's basically Jacob's Ladder in a nutshell, but definitely a great watch because you definitely are thinking the whole time, like, well, what's going on? You know, is he okay? Is the government really after him? Is he really being like mind controlled with some sort of like LSD, like covert op MK Ultra thing? So it's very, very good movie to watch. Definitely a recommendation.
Yeah, the first time I saw that, I was like, this is definitely a commentary on, I think it's a commentary on how we treat our veterans too. Like, had he not been in the field necessarily dying, let's say, you know, he went to Vietnam and then he was sent back to New York to just like go back and fit, like these veterans are expected to go back to their home and just automatically fit into society.
Oh, yeah.
They have all these mental health issues after, they have PTSD, they have a variety of things going on, and now they're seeing things in their everyday life that are odd, they shouldn't be there, they're out of place, and then they start getting paranoid, they think the government's poisoning them, so...
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to go into that movie. I think, like I said, a lot of it is how we treat our veterans and how they are when they come back home, and they're just expected to go back to normal life. And they have all these issues, they're seeing things, it's sad.
It is really sad, too, and I definitely agree with you, because there was, like... In the movie, you know, he's going down to, like, the VA, and he's, like, talking to some of his old vet friends, and they're kind of, like, all being weird, too, so it definitely, I think, has a lot to say, too, with, like, somebody coming back from war and trying to adjust to, you know, society again, because, I mean, I can't imagine what that's like.
No, I think you explained that very well, though, because that's a crazy movie. If anybody's seen it, you'll know what we mean. That's just, like,
it's a great, great movie.
It's a good movie. It's just crazy. It's kind of all over the place.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to follow. You're going to be looking up like what's the ending? What's the whole meaning behind Jacob's Ladder?
Yes.
So you'll be doing your own research. All right. So what do you got for yours?
Okay. So a personal favorite of mine I picked for my number one is American Psycho.
Mm-hmm. Good one right there.
So essentially, American Psycho is a movie. It's based on a book that came out. The movie came out, or it's based in New York City in 1987. Mm-hmm. It's all about this, I believe he's an investment banker on Wall Street, big, hotshot, rich, handsome guy. He's played by Christian Bale, which Christian Bale back in the day was a babe, so it's suiting. His name is Patrick Bateman, and essentially the movie kind of sets him up initially to be this kind of narcissist. Like in the first couple opening scenes, he's doing face masks, he's looking in the mirror for extended periods of time. You're like, wow, this guy's super into himself. Is it just because he's a rich jerk? Like, what's going on? And then it kind of turns to, you know, he's an investment banker by day, hanging out with like his Wall Street bros.
Yes, yeah.
And then at night, he's a gruesome serial killer.
Yeah, he's a psychopath.
He's a complete psychopath. He's like luring people into his apartment, his friends, his coworkers, prostitutes, I think his secretary, his girlfriend, things like that. He basically lures them all into his apartment, and the way he kills them is even psychotic. I mean, he's talking to these people, he's feeding them drinks, And while they're sitting there relaxed with their little cocktail, he's rolling out the plastic.
Yeah.
Starts playing Huey Lewis in the news while he brutally slaughters these people in his apartment.
Right.
And there's a scene where one of the girls, or was it the guy? I don't remember. Someone tries to get away.
That's
and
the girl under the chainsaw?
Yeah. A girl tries to get away, and she's at the bottom of the stairs in his apartment, and he throws a chainsaw, and of course it perfectly lands on her.
Right.
And slices her open. I love this movie. I just think
it's a great film.
It's a great film. I hate to say a fun, like, horror movie, but it's fun, it's interesting. You're watching this, and you're like, this guy is truly psychotic. Psychotic, not psychotic. He's truly psychotic.
Yes.
So on top of all this killing, the guy's a complete narcissist. Like I said, he's super into his appearance. There's a long, drawn-out scene where he's really offended by his business partner's his business card.
Yeah.
And he's comparing it to his own.
Right.
And they basically look identical, but there's, like, minute differences, and he's comparing them, and he's losing his mind over it.
Yeah, he's picking out on, like, the smallest
smallest font, and, like, oh, this is 0.1 lettering to the right.
Right.
And essentially at the end of the film, he kind of loses his shit, and he calls his lawyer up, and he's like, I've killed a lot of people, I don't know how many, I don't know why, and, he's crying, he lost his shit, and the next day he sees his lawyer in person, and his lawyer kind of just shakes his hand and is like,
yeah,
how you doing, have a good day, kind of thing, and
right.
never brings it up again. So when you're watching this, you're like, first of all, did that all really happen? Was he imagining that? Because his lawyer said something, right? Like, surely his lawyer would have been like, we need to get a case on this, we need to get you defended, whatever.
Right.
So you're watching this, not sure if it actually is real or if he's imagining it. But if you do a deeper dive into this movie, it is real, and the author of the book as well, it was a woman that wrote the book and a woman that directed the movie.
Yes, yeah.
She said that she intended the audience to be very clear that he was doing these things, and the reason he got away with it was essentially just like...
It's because it was New York where he was doing it in. It was basically like, if no one's asking you about it, don't say anything.
No, I was thinking more like, from what I found, it was like more of the greed. Like where he was, because he was in like a wealthy area, he had a lot of money, and a lot of times in America, if you have a lot of money, you can get away with a lot of things.
I guess so.
It was kind of like him being a narcissist, him having all of this money, the violence of corporate greed.
I guess it could be like an allegory toward that. Yeah, I guess.
But at the end, he has some kind of moral awakening, and he's calling his lawyer, and he's like, "I've killed a lot of people," and it's a great scene. He does a great job acting if you ever see it.
Yeah.
He tries to hold himself accountable at the end, and then, the next day he kind of regrets it, sees his lawyer, and it's just kind of hushed under the rug.
That's what I mean. I feel like it's kind of just like, no one came to you and said, you're under arrest, so don't tell me that you killed a bunch of people, because what am I going to do? I'm your lawyer, I'm going to defend you no matter what, but I'm not going to go turn you in, Because there was no, I think the cops were chasing him, but I don't think they actually knew it was him.
Well, that's a big thing in the movie, too, is there's no accountability. Because is it because of who he was? Like, why was there no accountability in this movie?
Right.
And obviously, I'm not a doctor, but from what I found online, a lot of the themes touched on in this movie were antisocial personality disorder, obviously narcissism. Mm-hmm. The dude's a complete narcissist.
Oh, definitely.
And potentially even schizophrenia.
Which would make sense, I guess, if you took the whole take on he was imagining everything, like maybe he was thinking all this, and that was what the movie was about, but clearly that's not the case,
Yes,
but a lot of people still do feel like he was imagining it.
He's a complete psycho. There's one part where he's on a date and he, I don't know, and I don't remember if he says it out loud for real or if he's thinking it, but he's like, I'd like to cut you up right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's so handsome and rich, the girls just, everybody trusts him.
Yeah, I know. He just is your typical guy,
Yeah, there's just
typical
this inherent
Wall Street
trust
guy,
of people like
lawyer
that.
Or whatever he's supposed to be.
But no, I love that movie. Highly recommend American Psycho for sure.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. That's always a good watch, too. I think it's pretty long, too. I remember it being over 2 hours.
It's pretty long. Yeah. There's a lot to it. I've watched some videos on YouTube before where psychologists break down the scenes, because there is a part where a lawyer interviews him. And you're watching it, and you're like, does the lawyer know? Does he know what he's doing, or does he not know? And it's a very confusing movie to watch. You're like, they're surely onto him. They have all this evidence against him. They must be onto him. And then the next scene, they're buddy-buddy, so...
Right, exactly.
It's a hard movie to follow, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's a fun movie, though. I like it.
I know, I hate to say movies like that are fun, but I think it's fun.
It's a fun movie. A lot of these movies I think are fun. I mean, we think they're fun, I guess, at least.
All right, what you got?
All right, so I picked The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Came out in 2017. So this movie, I think, for those of you who've seen it, are probably wondering why everybody in the movie is talking so funny. I still am. Couldn't figure out why.
Oh, really?
I mean, really just at the director's discreet, he just wanted them to talk kind of more like in a play sense. Because this movie is basically a movie rendition of the Greek tragedy Iphigenia. I think I'm saying that wrong, but it's a Greek tragedy from Greece. And it's basically that movie to the T. I did a lot of the research that I did. It definitely, they both coincide to being like the same thing, this movie and the Greek tragedy.
Right.
So basically, it's Colin Farrell playing this Dr. Stephen Murphy. He befriends this young boy, Martin, after telling him his father has died. And Stephen, Colin Farrell, he's a cardiac doctor. So he's, very cardiac surgeon, actually, I believe. So he's a very smart man, very knowledgeable, very wealthy. So after he tells Martin that his father has died, they kind of become like this kind of friendship. It's just, he's kind of, just being nice to the kid, really trying to give him a father figure after he just lost his father. But this is then the movie starts getting even weirder because then Martin starts trying to, weasel his way into the family. And you think, you're kind of like, when you're watching this, you're like, what's going on? Why are they talking so weird? And, it's kind of just very weird feeling. It's almost like dread in a way. But I could be wrong. I'm not really sure exactly what you feel. But,
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It makes me feel uncomfortable.
I wouldn't even say uncomfortable. It's just like, what am I watching?
It's very odd. I remember there was one scene where, the girl gets her period and they're just, announcing it to the family. It was just very odd.
Because it's, the dialect of the movie is so weird, too.
It's very
It makes
odd.
it very weird,
Yes.
So,
it's
but
not
basically...
how we're talking right now.
Yeah, no, not at all. It's very, proper and, words are said, not, with any kind of, ebonics to them or anything like that, or slang. It's very weird, but it definitely makes the movie, interesting to watch. But so once Martin, I guess, gets involved with this family, weird stuff starts happening, and that's where it comes back onto the Greek tragedy. So basically, what I found from researching what this movie could be about is basically Martin is the goddess Artemis in Greek mythology, and then Stephen is basically the mortal in the tragedy, and basically Martin feels responsible, or Martin feels that Stephen feels responsible for killing his father, so now Martin is making Stephen choose which one of his family is going to die before he dies. So he's basically giving him an ultimatum, and Martin, it's weird. It takes a really weird turn. You don't think the movie's going to go like this, but that's basically the movie. This kid weasels his way into their life, and then weird stuff starts happening. The son gets really sick, and I think his leg falls off or something like that, or he can't walk. And then something weird happens with the daughter, and Martin's telling them, you have to choose, because all of you will die if you don't choose one. So and that's basically the whole Greek story, too. It's literally just a movie rendition, if any of you guys are familiar with the Greek story. So it's very cool. It makes you think a lot. You're like, what the hell am I watching?
Yeah.
This makes absolutely no sense. I have no idea what's going on. Why is this kid here?
Yeah. It kind of reminds me a lot, if anybody's seen, I'm thinking of Ending Things.
Kind of, yeah.
It reminds me of that. It reminds me of Mother with Jennifer Lawrence. The way that they talk is very proper. The timeline doesn't seem to add up. There's holes in the timeline.
Yeah, it's super weird.
It's a very odd movie, and then I'm surprised they got Colin Farrell to do it, actually.
Well, there's a lot of... Nicole Kidman was the wife, too, so there's a lot of famous people in it. I mean, beside those two, I guess.
Those are big names to get in a movie like this.
Yeah, but it's definitely a great movie. If you want a movie that makes you think, and or if you like just movies that are weird like that, definitely.
It's kind of like an A24 movie, if anybody's seen those.
Yeah, you'd think something like that. Yeah, it's very weird like that.
It makes more sense that it was based on a Greek tragedy, though.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It was basically a very, very old story that somebody just made into a movie and modernized it, basically.
That makes a little more sense.
But did a very good job. I love the movie. I watched it, quite a bit, actually. It's one of my favorites. But I like weird stuff, so.
I mean, isn't that why we're here?
That is why we're here. All right, what you got?
Okay, so I picked a goodie for my next one. I picked Split.
Oh, good movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie. I think this was a super popular movie when it came out. I think it's maybe like, I'd say at least like top 5 psychological horror movies out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's really the definition of a psychological movie.
Oh, yeah.
So essentially the main character, Kevin, he has some childhood abuse. I think his mom abused him. He had some abandonment issues. And something that can arise when somebody goes through a lot of issues in their childhood is something called dissociative identity disorder, or DID.
Yeah.
And this main character, Kevin, had 23 different identities, disorders, or alters.
Right.
And the movie kind of explores all of his different identities and how he changes them, how one of them is more powerful than the other, and all while he's kind of developing this 4th identity at the same time called the Beast,
right,
which is supposed to be the most powerful and the strongest and the meanest. Well, one of his dominant personalities, I think it's Barry or Dennis? No, maybe Dennis. One of them. There's a couple of them. There's Barry, Dennis.
I don't know, there's too many to keep track of, honestly.
One of them is like a 6-year-old boy. One of them is a middle-aged woman named Patricia.
Mm-hmm.
And Barry or Dennis, one of them has a thing for kidnapping young girls.
Yes.
So when that alter ego takes over, the main character, Kevin, goes and kidnaps 3 little girls. And the movie is basically all about the girls trying to manipulate his egos to let them release them. Right. So like when the 6-year-old boy takes over, the one girl manipulates the 6-year-old boy to be like, hey, where's the window?
Right.
Where's this and that? All while this 24th personality is taking over.
Uh-huh.
And this 24th personality essentially turns into like this superhuman beast of a dude, and they're trying to escape all while this guy is going mental. He's like crawling up the walls.
Yeah, I mean, he's literally...
He's got like superhuman strength all of a sudden.
Yes,
and
yes.
The idea is kind of like mental is a big part of it. Like if you mentally believe that you're that strong and you can do those things, then you will.
Right.
And he worked really hard on that ego, and I mean, 2 out of the 3 girls escaped, I believe, and then the one was kind of left over.
Right.
It's essentially a sequel to the M. Night Shyamalan movie Unbreakable?
Yeah,
Yes.
Unbreakable.
Unbreakable, okay.
Yeah.
But super interesting movie. I mean, just to see a dissociative identity disorder isn't a very common thing. So to see somebody with that many personalities, I know it's a fake movie, but...
No, it's cool, though. It's cool how they put that into a movie like that, because you really don't see a lot of movies about DID.
No, and I think in most... Like, if people that have DID, they maybe have 2 or 3 personalities.
Sure.
So to have 23 different alter egos is very interesting. And, I mean, the girls were smart. Take advantage of the different alter egos when they come on. And he can't tell when they're going to come on. There's different things that trigger them.
Right.
And I would say the psychology, mostly, of this movie is very sad, because when somebody goes through trauma that's so bad, they can't face their own life.
I know, it is
they
really sad.
They make up other alter egos to deal with their own life, basically.
Right.
So they're like, no, I'm not Kevin anymore, I'm Patricia, a middle-aged woman.
Yeah.
And it kind of helps them cope with what they've been going on, you know?
Oh, definitely.
Great movie, though. I think most people love Split when they watch it.
I know, and then, like, it's cool how he tied it in, because M. Night Shyamalan's just a great director, and he tied it into Unbreakable, and then that new one he came out with after... Glass, yeah. Oh, that was a great movie. And it's basically like a superhero, trilogy.
And you don't know that going into it. You go into it thinking it's a scary movie.
Yeah, which it is. It's terrifying. I mean, it is
terrifying. Yeah. You're kidnapped by this guy, and he can't even decide what person he is that day.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the one scene with the girl, and she's like talking to Kevin, where one of his personalities, and then like the one that's like a teenage girl.
Yes, and he's like twirling his hair.
Yeah, and then like starts dancing to like this like techno music, and she's just like looking at him like, I'm never getting out of here alive. Like you just see pure terror in her face. Like there's this 40-year-old man dancing to like,
because he thinks he's a teenage girl.
Iconic pop,
Even his therapist, like you see in the movie, he goes and sees his therapist quite often, and she'll ask, who am I talking to today?
Yes, yeah.
And then when he starts to get mean, she'll be like, okay, I'm talking to Dennis, or I'm talking to this personality.
Right.
And yeah, it's a super interesting movie. I think most people love Split. It's a great movie.
Oh, it is a great film. Really good film. All right, so this one's kind of a roller coaster.
You keep picking the weird ones.
I like the weird ones. Like, when I watched this movie, I was like, this is so interesting. It wasn't it was kind of scary, definitely like a dread feeling, but it's movie I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. Came out in 2016. Basically, it's a story about this young hospice nurse named Lily Saylor. She moves into a secluded and haunted house to take care of a dying author, Iris Blum. And basically, it's kind of, the movie touches on a lot of I guess, trauma experiences, because it's a very hard movie to watch, because it's not really like anything exciting happening. It's kind of a slow burn, if you will.
The hospice is kind of slow.
Yeah, and so basically this girl moves in to take care of this woman. She's like this horror author, and she's got, she's dying, basically. So she's just kind of tending to the house, getting her dressed, making her dinner and everything like that, and then weird stuff starts happening, she starts to think the house is haunted, and then there's like mold that's appearing on the ceiling and stuff like that, and it's like appearing on her, and now it's just weird. And then she starts seeing ghosts, she starts hearing things, and then basically it's just a really weird movie. You got to kind of watch it. I can't really explain it because it's like sections almost it happens in. But essentially, like, what I got from researching the movie and like my understanding of it is that basically the girl that was taking care of the author was really just a character in one of her books. Oh. And basically she was living out that story that was in one of her books. And she's but she realized that, like, she's like, I'm just like a character in a book, And then it kind of has to deal with a lot of, like, with trauma, like how, like, the body is the first thing affected. So, like, she, like, touches the mold, she, like, gets it on her hands, and, she starts, like, kind of fixating on that and stuff like that. This is just an example of the trauma.
Right.
And then it goes, there's other aspects of it and whatnot, but it's just very weird movie. Definitely one that you have to watch and kind of do a little research on, because when I first watched it, I was like, what the hell did I just watch? It was super weird.
So is she the pretty little thing that lives in the house? Is that the name of the story the author was writing?
That's what I was kind of thinking. I didn't really get an answer on it.
That's what I would assume, maybe.
Well, because there was, like, a book that she was looking for in the movie, and she, like, finds the book, and then that's when I think when everything gets really, like, weird, like, the ghost, like, she ends up dying in the house and everything like that, because remember, like, the girl dies, the hospice nurse and the elderly woman dies, so it's super, super weird. So it's basically like she's the ghost, really, when it comes down to it. Like, she's the actual ghost in the house. It's super weird, very, very hard to understand. You definitely got to watch it.
The house, essentially.
Essentially, and like
she thinks it's haunted.
In like a different dimension. Yeah. It's super, super weird. It's a really good, or like in a different timeline or something. Okay. I don't know. It's super weird. It's very hard to understand, but definitely fun to watch and research on, because there's a lot of theories of like what it could be, what's it mean and everything. And the same guy that directed this also did The Black Coat's Daughter, which is another like really
that's a good movie,
weird horror movie too. So that's another one.
I think it's based on a book. I'm the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. I think that's a book.
It could be. Yeah, I think it was, actually, now that you're saying that. I think maybe even he wrote the book. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, no, that's a good pick, though. That's definitely one that I watched and I was one and done. I was like, I don't need to see this again.
Yeah, it's you gotta watch it again, though, because then it starts to make sense. I've probably seen it like 30 times, because I was like, I gotta make this make sense. Like, it's gotta make sense to me, so... That's my pick for that one. I mean, I thought it was a great movie. A lot of people are probably going to go watch it and be like, what the hell is he talking? This is so stupid. It's so boring, But I like it. I think it's a good movie.
Sometimes slow burns end up being like the best movies, though. There's so much anticipation and so much build into it.
No, I definitely agree. I hope people, will actually give it a try, because I think it's a good movie.
I'm sure.
All right, what you got?
For my next pick, there's a lot to unpack here, and I'm aware of how, like, iconic this movie is and how much there is to it, and I'm probably not going to cover nearly as much psychology in it that there is. I'm just going to give probably a brief overview of it.
Sure.
Because there's a lot to this. So my next pick is Silence of the Lambs.
Which is, that movie?
Yes, one of the most iconic, highly analyzed movies next to The Shining, which will come on later.
Precious.
So essentially, if you guys haven't seen this movie, if you're like in the 1% of the population, there is an FBI student, and her name is Clarice, and I think at this time the FBI is essentially trying to catch this serial killer called Buffalo Bill. He's a crazed maniac. He rapes, tortures, and kills women. And in order to catch this serial killer, Buffalo Bill, they use a former serial killer, Dr. Hannibal Lecter, and they kind of use him to maybe get some clues or insight on how to catch the serial killer, which, fun fact, the FBI actually did this when they were trying to catch BTK.
Right.
They used Ed Kemper. I think they used Ted Bundy as well to try to catch BTK.
Yeah, the whole Mindhunter show was about that in the book.
If anybody's seen Mindhunter, yes, they use this quite often to try to find other serial killers. So this is not too far-fetched for what the FBI would do.
For sure. I definitely agree.
So the whole movie is essentially Clarice interviewing Hannibal Lecter, who he is a doctor, he's a psychiatrist, but he's also a sociopath, he's a psychopath. He killed numerous people in very violent ways. He cannibalized some of them.
Oh, yeah.
And they interview him to see if he has any insight into this case. And just the way he speaks is very unsettling. Like, as soon as she walks in, he knows, like, the perfume she's wearing.
Oh, he's super smart guy.
Super smart guy, but, like, very manipulative. Like, I'm sure there's deeper psychology into that. When somebody walks in, you immediately just kind of, like, take their armor away and say, I know what perfume you're wearing, you're doing this, you're doing that, whatever.
Yeah.
And she's trying to interview him to get information about Buffalo Bill, and he's just interested in her. He's trying to, like, pick apart her psyche.
Yes.
And so that's kind of what's been going on. It's kind of like a power struggle between the two of them. And he asks really random questions, and you're like, what? And then you realize that he's smarter than everybody in the room, essentially.
Right.
Let's see, what else did I put here? So some of the psychology between Hannibal Lecter would be that he's obviously suffering from some kind of psychological condition, possibly antisocial personality disorder, since he has a definite disregard for what is right or wrong in the world. Even when talking to an FBI agent, he still has no...
Yeah, he has no remorse or care for anything, you know.
He stands by everything that he did. He talks about how he ate his last victim with, like, beans or something.
Yeah, and it's weird, too, because he was, like a doctor. Like, he was a medical doctor and very, very smart guy. And it's just super weird. Yeah, and he's being, and he's a maximum security prison now. And
he has the ability to really manipulate other people. I mean, at the end, he has this very extravagant stunt where he manipulates multiple security guards and he escapes prison, essentially.
Yeah.
He does, I guess, help the FBI enough. They do end up finding Buffalo Bill. He gives them enough hints, but he really gets more out of the situation than the FBI does.
Yeah, because now he's out of prison.
Now he's out, so he kind of uses it as his advantage.
Yeah.
But there's so much to unpack in this movie. Even the title itself, Silence of the Lambs, he pulled from Clarice. She mentioned to him when she was younger, one of her worst memories is, I think she grew up on a farm, and when they would slaughter the lambs.
Yes, yeah.
And she would hear them crying, and one of the things he says to her is, have the lambs stop crying, Clarice.
Yes, yeah.
So I think it touches on her motivation to save helpless victims, and her career as an FBI agent, the same way she felt she needed to save the lambs when she was younger.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
And he picks up on that right away.
Oh, yeah.
And uses it, not against her, but uses it maybe just to intimidate her and...
Yeah, I definitely think so.
Get her weak spots out. And I think she's like the 10th student or something to try to interview him and get anything out of him.
Yeah.
And she was the only one that he even gave any information to.
Exactly. I know. He was a very hard nut to crack, that's for sure. Yeah, a great film. I love Anthony Hopkins in that. I mean, he's just freaking creepy.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. And even Buffalo Bill himself, I mean, he's got a lot going on, too. He dresses up as a woman. He keeps these women that he kidnaps in a hole for a few days, keeps them alive, and then kills them. So there's a lot to unpack there. Like, why keep them alive and then kill them?
Right.
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, it's super. He like makes skin suits out of them and stuff like that. Yeah, it's very, very like Ed Gein-y.
It's very Ed Gein-y. It's very Psycho-esque.
Yeah.
But it's a great horror movie. I mean, definitely regarded as one of the most psychological horror movies, I think, just because of how smart and intelligent Hannibal Lecter is and how he can get into your psyche. Like, if he were to walk into that prison in his cell, he would just immediately know everything going on.
Exactly. He can read you like a book from just watching you walk by.
Yes.
You know, it's a great film.
All right, what you got?
All right, so I did The Sixth Sense. I don't think there's really like a whole lot of like allegory with this movie. I guess maybe just like the whole fact that it's like a guy and a young kid, maybe like the father aspect of it, him not being able to have a son or whatever. But it's a good movie. I think it actually has to do also too with like maybe ESP and other sort of like telepathic abilities, because the kid, in the movie, he sees dead people.
Right. The iconic line.
Yeah. So it's, I think it touches well with that. It's another good M. Night Shyamalan movie.
He does a lot of psychology movies. He's very smart.
Yeah, I think I think he likes to touch in like psychological horror a lot. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like I'm sure everybody's seen The Sixth Sense. I mean, it's an older film. Bruce Willis is in it. Haley Joel Osment's a little boy in the movie, and basically it's like the whole time you're watching the movie, though, you think Bruce Willis is a real person when really no, he's dead, and the kid is seeing the ghost because he sees dead people.
Right.
And it's weird because you don't really notice it until Bruce Willis starts realizing it, because then he's like flashing back. It's like, oh yeah, that's why my wife wouldn't look at me like every time I walked into her, because I really wasn't there. I'm a ghost, And same with like, the kid's mom didn't really like, she just thought he was talking to one of the ghosts or something like that. Didn't realize like, anything like that.
Right.
So it was kind of not really a great pick in my opinion, but I think there's definitely like a lot of psychological going on with it, because like the whole time you're trying to piece together like what's going on, like why is he?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people after watching that were probably still like, were these people alive? Were they dead? Like still researching, like
right, exactly. Like it makes sense all in the end. It's like okay, yeah, all right, that makes sense. He saw Bruce Willis.
I love a good plot twist though. Like I think that
was a good plot twist.
I love a good plot twist like that really makes you stop and think. And then in my mind, whenever there's a plot twist like that, I always think back to the whole movie to see if there was clues.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, I should have picked up on it there or there. I should have picked up on it.
Right. I think the whole point of those kind of movies too is to make you go watch it again and be like, okay, that's it right there. All right, I got it. That's what
like,
when
okay,
you
I
said
got
that.
It that time.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a great movie.
I know. I like that one a lot. And the iconic movie too. I mean, I think one of M. Night Shyamalan's first movies too.
Yeah. What a genius.
All right, what you got here?
Okay, so I have a movie called It Follows, which a lot of you may or may not have seen. It wasn't like a super popular movie in theaters, but I think a lot of people at least know about it. It Follows, it's about a girl. She has essentially a one-night stand with a guy, and he ties her down to a chair afterwards. They have a one-night stand in a car, and then they're in like a parking garage, and he ties her down to a chair, and this like creature, I don't even want to say creature because it's a human, this naked human, I think it's an older woman, starts just walking towards her all creepily. Yeah. And she's sitting there and she's like, what's going on? And he's like, you just have to let it catch you, let it get to you, and keep passing it on.
Right.
And she's like, what the hell? And then he runs away. She eventually gets away from this creature. But the whole movie, everywhere she looks, there's some naked person just slowly walking towards her the whole time.
Yeah, not even naked. I think one of them was like just like this old woman, like in a nightgown, like just like
yes, it's true.
Like,
but it changed. It's like it changed every time. It was a different human coming towards her, and she eventually finds out that this is a sexually transmitted thing. Once you have sex with somebody, they become next in line for these creatures to chase.
Yes.
And then once the creatures catch up to that person and kill them, it comes back to you.
Right.
So you have the idea is to keep passing it on and on and on, and it'll never catch up to you.
Right.
She finds this out because she has another one-night stand, and the guy she's with, he gets like brutally killed by one of these creatures. She's watching it from across the street, and they brutally tear him apart.
Yeah.
They try all these different ways to try to catch the creature. She tries to pass it on a few more times. They try to get the creature trapped in a pool and electrocute it. They do a bunch of different things because they're teenagers, they're kids.
Right.
But when I first watched this, I thought it was a great movie. Like, it was very well done.
Yeah.
But as soon as I saw it, I was like, that's got to be a commentary on like HIV, AIDS.
Yes, that's what I always thought. Yeah, it was like STIs.
Yes. Immediately, I was like, this is some kind of commentary on something like that. So I researched to see if my theory was true, and there was a few other people on the internet that felt the same way as me. Like, essentially, if you keep passing it on, the idea is, it'll never catch up to me, but it's always staring you down. There's always that chance it's going to get to you. Like, eventually it's going to get to you.
Sure.
Once you've, passed it on or contracted it or whatever, it's going to get to you. It's going to track you down.
Right.
There was a lot more to this movie, too. Like, there was people saying that you know, the creature following you is just a reminder that death will always exist. It'll always follow you. It'll always be there.
That is a good. Yeah, I mean that I like that idea too. I mean, if you think about it, I mean,
on like a grander scale of the world.
Yes, yeah.
Something chasing you and following you like that, like
that would be death. Yeah,
that would be death. It's always there. It's always going to find you. You can keep delaying it as much as you want. Try to put some people before you, but it's always going to end up coming to you.
No, that makes actually a lot of sense. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think that's a really good explanation for the film.
Yeah, so essentially the title, like, it follows, like, when you have sex, you're passing, quote-unquote, it on.
Right.
And it just keeps getting passed on and passed on and passed on until eventually it comes back up with you. So in the beginning, you're kind of backtracking here, but it starts off very creepy because, like, the guy she's on a date with, he's like, do you see that woman right there? And she's like, no. And he's like, okay, we need to leave.
Right.
And then they leave and they immediately go have sex. And then, you know, you see the same woman coming after her now instead of him.
Yeah.
And now she sees the woman because she's contracted, quote unquote, it.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's the other thing. The other people don't see.
Yeah, you can't see the creature.
It's only the person that has it will be able to see the creature.
Yes, and it's just like, just imagine this naked person just like looking you dead on and just walking towards you.
Yeah, it's a creepy movie.
At a slow pace, like it's a slow burn, and they finally get to you and they just kill you so brutally.
Yeah, oh, I know, and it's a good movie too because it's just like it's something different, you know. And
totally different.
It's super creepy the way it's filmed. It's like you don't know exactly what period in time this is. Like you think it's like the 80s, but it's like not. You know, it's actually like modern day, but it doesn't feel like it. It's super weird.
It causes you to feel very, like, uncomfortable. You know, you're very unsettled when you're watching it. You're not really sure what's going on. All you can wrap your head around is, okay, well, you know, you need to keep having sex with people, essentially, to keep passing it on.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
Which I think, like I said, as soon as I watched it, I was like, that's got to be something for some kind of STD, some kind of commentary on that. Like, passing it on, quote unquote.
Right. No, definitely a great film, though, for sure.
Yeah, I can watch that movie all the time. I love that.
And I do like putting it on, like especially around Halloween time, because it's got that creepy vibe.
It's super creepy.
It's just
and it's unique. Like I just imagine the person that came up with that and was like, "Hear me out."
I know, right? Seriously. All right, I got In the Mouth of Madness, 1994. This one's a roller coaster too. This is definitely a psychological horror, kind of like a fantasy movie, actually. But basically, it's this journey of this guy, John Trent, who's portrayed by Sam Neill, Jurassic Park. He's tasked with finding this missing author, Sutter Kane. Kane is a writer, and he is renowned for crafting tales so disturbing that they drive the readers to the brink of madness. So he's basically looking for this missing author. And he starts, like, picking up clues, like, where he might be, and he ends up going to this place that's actually mentioned in one of his books. It's a fictional town called Hobe's End, but it's now manifested itself into reality. And then basically from there, the movie's just, like, it goes into complete chaos. It's a great movie. John Carpenter directed it.
Love that.
Super, super weird. You're going to definitely just have to watch it and look it up for yourself. I can't even begin to explain. So basically, what I got from it is, like, that things... that seem fake can also be real. So maybe like the whole time he was looking for this guy in these imaginary places, it was a real place, you know, he was actually looking for him at, but it just goes completely weird. It gets completely weird. Yeah, you've never seen it, so you can't really say anything about it. So definitely a good movie. Definitely a good movie to watch. I can't even, like, it's just very hard to explain it. You gotta just watch it.
Well, it makes it sound enticing, though, the way you explain it.
Yeah, it's creepy. Yeah, because you're kind of like, oh, it's just going to be like a horror movie. He's going to find the author. There's going to be some ghosts and stuff. It's like, no, he's going to go completely insane.
Yeah, like, it's a very common plot. Like, it's nothing crazy, the plot itself.
Yeah, like, I mean, I remember they're at, like, this church in that town, Hobe's End, and just, like, the church just, like, opens up into, like, this pit, and, like, these things start flying out and stuff like that. Yeah, it's super, super weird. So it's basically, like, it's Sam Neill going crazy, basically looking for this guy. Like, he's never going to find the guy, and he's going crazy looking for him.
Just, like, hopeless.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'm losing my voice there. So, yeah, it's a good film. Definitely you should watch it. I'll watch it. I'll make you watch it one day.
I'm sure. Okay, so for my next pick, again... This is probably the most psychologically analyzed movie ever made. I'm not going to nearly touch on anything, everything there is to it. I do want to do a whole episode on The Shining as well as Dr. Sleep. For those of you who don't know, Doctor Sleep is the sequel to The Shining. The book and the movie came out. I'm sorry, I don't know when the book came out, but the movie came out a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And it kind of closes the door on The Shining. But essentially, The Shining came out in 1980. It was a Stephen King novel. There was a film adaptation. The one I'm talking about specifically is the Stanley Kubrick one. It's about a family of three. There's Jack. He's played by Jack Nicholson. His wife Wendy, played by Shelley Duvall, and their son Danny. And essentially, the dad, Jack, he gets an opportunity to wash the Overlook Hotel in Colorado because they close for the winter. Mm-hmm. So he gets to essentially be like a security guard, make sure the pipes don't freeze, things like that. And he's also a writer, so he takes this as an opportunity to, get some time away, do some writing, things like that. Right. But there's a lot more going on than that. There's some history of the dad, Jack. He's an alcoholic. He has some abusive tendencies that are kind of touched on. The son, Danny, he has some psychic abilities that are kind of referred to as, like, the shine or a shining.
That's what he calls it. Yeah.
Yes. He has this imaginary friend, Tony, that he talks to. And the movie just kind of spirals out of control from there. It touches on a lot of different things. At first, when you kind of watch it, I remember when I first watched it, I thought maybe it was just, like, claustrophobia. Like, they were just going crazy because they were in this hotel all stuck together. Like Stockholm Syndrome almost. Like, they're just freaking out because they're in a hotel. Because essentially, the dad, Jack, he tries to kill his whole family with an axe. Right. And you're thinking, okay, maybe he just lost his mind because they're stuck in here for so long. But then you find out that this whole hotel has just been a breeding ground for negative energy, negative entities. It's haunted. It preys on different souls. Right. There's all these, like, bottom feeder demon things that, prey on you. And there was a murder that happened there previously. And this man, he killed his two young girls. Everybody knows the iconic scene of the twin girls standing in the hallway. And his ghost or his spirit kind of inhabits Jack and kind of, like, possesses him. Right. Next thing you know, Jack is drinking alcohol again when he's supposed to be sober. He's being abusive to his family. Sure. And he's losing his goddamn mind.
He's going crazy the whole time.
He typed up, like, 1,000 pages saying, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Yes. I mean, he just loses his mind. And there's a lot to touch on here. Like I said, potentially isolation, cabin fever, claustrophobia, as well as, like, how fragile a human mind can be when they're put in situations like this. If you're not strong enough and you're in a place where negative things live or murder has happened, you might fall into that same pattern. Right. There was a lot that I found in this movie. They even said maybe the Overlook Hotel is a reflection of, like, his subconscious mind.
It could, very well could be. I don't know,
Of course, family dynamics and mental health were a huge part of this movie. I mean, the son alone has enough going on that he's seeing these psychic things and he's talking to all these people that aren't there, let alone the dad having a drinking problem and being abusive to his wife and his child. Right. Overall, this is just a masterclass of psychology horror. I mean, this is the psychological horror movie, I'd say.
I would agree with you there. There's a lot of, like, mental health issues in the movie and topics. I mean, the directing itself was kind of...
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah. Not even just the story itself, but the way it was directed, the way Stanley Kubrick did it, down to the carpet pattern. Right. Everything was made to have a psychological impact on somebody, and he definitely did on Shelley Duvall, that's for sure. Oh, yeah. I mean, he did takes 237 times just to get them right.
Yeah, I know. Poor Shelley, man. That's going to be brutal.
I mean, that one scene where she's walking up the stairs, or he's walking up the stairs, and he's like, "Darling, light of my life." They filmed that like 300 times. Yeah. And she just has to sit there and look disheveled 300 times. Right. And, yeah, she lost her mind because of it. But yeah, so not only did it have a psychological impact on the actors, the viewers, but it was also just a psychological story altogether.
Yeah, definitely a great. I mean, everybody's seen it. I feel
everybody's seen it.
But it's a super, super great movie. Super great book too. Haven't read the book.
No, I want to do a whole episode on The Shining and Dr. Sleep too, because I think it's super interesting the correlation between Dr. Sleep and The Shining.
Oh yeah, I mean it's definitely good. It's a cool like sequel. You know?
It's a cool sequel. I remember watching Dr. Sleep I hadn't seen The Shining in like a year, so I was kind of like, some parts were kind of loose ends for me, and then I was like, oh, I kind of remember that, or I kind of remember this. There's a lot of small details to it, so I think it'd be cool to dive into that, and the psychology of Dr. Sleep as well.
Yeah, I definitely think you should probably watch like The Shining, and then right after do
it's a good like 5 hours of my life.
Yeah, that's like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Alright, go ahead.
Alright, so I picked this one, is Possession 1981. This movie, yeah, you're just gonna have to see it.
Crazy movie.
Basically, the movie, I think a lot from what I've been researching online is it's like an allegory for a messy divorce.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, and it also touches on a lot of dark subjects like self-harm, stuff like that, abuse, and like in a relationship, and just how people try to make something work that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
It's very, very sad, and this movie is just very bizarre because they take it to the extreme, and it's filmed very weird too.
Yes.
I can't pronounce the guy that directed the movie. Very, I think, Polish or like a Serbo-Croatian name. But basically, it's Sam Neill. It's a young Sam Neill, so Jurassic Park people out there will know that. And he comes back from somewhere, and then he starts talking to his wife. She's acting very strange, so he thinks like there's not a divorce. I'm sorry, she's having an affair, and so he starts to try to get to the bottom of it. Finds out she's been having this affair with this guy named Heinrich. He gets in contact with Heinrich and then learns that she's got this secret apartment. He goes to the secret apartment and she's like breeding this monster, and it's a literal monster. It's like a Leviathan thing that looks like Cthulhu, and it's super weird. And there's some scenes in the movie that are going to make people very uncomfortable. I'm not going to mention them, but it's a great movie, and I think it does touch on divorce very well. Now looking back at it, and
but when you first watch it, you
have no idea what's going on.
You're like at first when I watched this, I tuned out, and then I looked up at that part with the octopus creature thing, and I was like, ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, what did I miss?
It's kind of hard to watch, too, because it's kind of a slow burny.
It is kind of slow burn.
And, you're trying to make sense of what the hell's going on, because it's weird just how it's filmed. But
it's almost filmed like first person.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, you're basically
there.
Yeah, you're with that guy that's played by Sam Neill. I forget his name. But,
yeah, that's a crazy movie.
Yeah, it's super good. Super good movie. And it's very controversial. It's been banned in, I think, like 70 countries just for
Well, that's why we watched it initially. We were like, oh, cool, it's been banned.
But I could see maybe back then why it was banned. It's really not that bad.
No, it's not. There's no, abuse of anybody.
There's nothing like, oh my god, this is appalling, But I could see back then why it would have been banned, because it was the whole, like Satanic Panic and, all that stuff going on in the 80s. But, definitely a good watch.
Crazy movie, crazy ride of a movie.
Yeah, you're gonna thank me when you watch it, or you're gonna hate me. And it's good luck trying to find it too, because I think it was on Shudder for like a week and they pulled it.
That's when we watched it.
Yeah. No, I can't find it anywhere else.
Okay, so the next movie I picked is it might be more of like a thriller than a scary movie, but I still think it deserves recognition for this list. Maybe it scared some people, maybe it's considered horror in some places. But I picked Shutter Island. Mm-hmm. I think this is a great movie. I've seen it a few times since it initially came out. It's set in 1954. It's all about two U.S. Marshals. One is played by Leonardo DiCaprio. His name is Teddy Daniels, and his partner is Chuck. And essentially, the movie opens, they're on a boat, and they're heading to Shutter Island, which has a mental health hospital on it, called Ashcliff Hospital. And the idea is that they're sent there because they're looking for a missing patient called Rachel Solando. Apparently, she was accused of drowning her 3 children, so that's why she's at the mental health facility. So they get there, they're at the hospital, they're interviewing patients, they're interviewing staff, and things are just weird. Everybody's acting weird towards these 2 marshals. They can't figure out why. They can't figure out why the patients are being weird, the staff's being weird. The patients kind of slip Teddy Daniels some notes, tell him to run as fast as he can.
Yeah.
The doctors at the hospital are being very odd. Well, then there's the biggest plot twist of the century, and ultimately, you find out that this U.S. Marshal, Teddy Daniels, this is all some sort of psychological role play for him.
Yeah.
Essentially, his name isn't even Teddy Daniels.
Right.
This is a persona that he created, kind of similar to dissociative identity disorder that I touched on earlier.
Yes.
This is a persona that he created to get away from his real life.
Right.
He had a lot of issues. He was in World War II, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And his wife actually drowned their 3 children. She
Yeah.
had some issues, and he came home and she drowned the 3 children in the lake, and then he killed the wife. So all along, this is some kind of psychological role play. He thinks he's looking for this missing woman, Rachel Sawanda, who drowned her 3 children.
Yeah, which is
and
really
he doesn't
his wife.
Even, which is really his wife. He doesn't even make the connection. That's how kind of far into this fantasy he is.
Yes, yeah.
And at the end, he gets to the end, and he's talking to the doctors, and the doctors were like, this is our last-ditch effort to try to convince you that this is all some sort of hoax. You're not a U.S. Marshal. You're not all of these things that you think you are. This is your real life. Your wife killed your kids. You killed your wife. You're in a mental hospital. This is reality.
Right.
Even, down to the cigarettes they were giving him. The cigarettes had, medicine in him. They were still giving him pills every day. They were giving him his mental health pills. And it's just a crazy movie to watch.
It's a crazy movie.
Because you go back and you rewatch it and you see all these clues in there and you're like, oh, okay, that's why they were still giving him medicine. He's still a patient there.
Right.
And that's why he always had his partner with him, because he was a patient. He couldn't escape.
Sure.
And then at the end, he's kind of faced with the decision of, do I keep living on with this fantasy, or do I face reality, essentially?
Right.
And he makes a comment. It's something along the lines of, would you rather live life as a monster, or... I
forget what it is, too. But it makes you think that, maybe he's not crazy. That's why I still think he's not crazy. I think the hospital, put him in there.
Anyways. The way
made him crazy. I think that's what it meant.
Anyways, what he says at the end is essentially would you rather live life as a monster, or, live life as a hero, I think is what he says.
Sure.
And it kind of indicates to the doctors and his quote-unquote partner that he accepts reality, he knows what reality is, but he's going to keep living this fantasy.
Yeah.
Because it's easier for him to accept that he's a U.S. Marshal, he's doing good in this world. It's easier for him to accept that than he's at some mental facility after killing his wife and his whole family's gone because his wife killed his kids.
Yeah, I can see that.
But this is...
It's a good movie.
It's a crazy movie.
It's very well done with the the mental aspect of it and the psychology behind it, because it's literally you're watching somebody with a problem acting it out, you know, living their delusions is what you're seeing, which is very,
and they
very
just
cool.
let him live out his fullest delusions. Everything he needs, they're whatever you need to do your investigation, we'll give it to you.
Yeah.
They let him live it out to the fullest, and the whole time you think he's a real U.S. Marshal.
Yeah, the whole time you think he's going to find this girl, the hospital killed her, and stuff like that. They're trying to cover it up, and then no, it's.
And he starts seeing stuff, and you're like, is he seeing this? Is he going crazy? And it turns out that I guess he wasn't crazy to begin with, but...
Right.
he snapped and killed his wife.
Yeah, he went crazy. Alright, so for my last one, it's not really horror. It'd probably be a thriller, maybe even a drama considered, but it's definitely, it's Donnie Darko, 2001. I feel like a lot of people... Movie. It is kind of a horror in a sense. I'd say more like a thriller. But there is some good psychology in it. Maybe even sci-fi, because they talk about time travel and all that stuff. But there is a lot of psychology in it. You take one look at Donnie. If you have, I'm not a doctor or have any kind of psychological background, but he'd had some symptoms that would be considered schizophrenic. He's very particular.
There's a talking bear following him around.
Well, that, but just his mannerisms and stuff he does, and he's got kind of a weird view on reality and how things should be. But basically the movie starts out, Donnie wakes up at a golf course, he slept walk there, and comes back home, comes back to find there was a jet engine that had fallen through his bedroom roof, and he would have died if he was in there. And then so the house gets fixed up, he goes back to regular life and everything, but then he starts having these visions of this rabbit named Frank, who's in this giant, it's a man in a bunny costume, and his name is Frank, and he tells Donnie that in 28 days or so, the world as he knows it is going to end. So he's trying to do everything he can to stop it. It's kind of like an adventure kind of movie too. He finds this girl, they fall in love and stuff like that. It's a good movie. It's a long movie, but there is like a lot of psychological things, like especially with him talking to Frank. That's it's not real. It's in his head and stuff like that. And basically, the whole point of the movie is that 28 days runs out. Donnie's gonna die, and basically, it's like a loop in time. So it gets kind of like science fiction-y. Basically, what Frank was trying to show him is how to manipulate time to get back to stop the plane engine from crashing through his roof. But really, he's supposed to die. That's what's going to save the world, kind of thing. Is if he goes back and lets this plane engine kill him, the world will be saved. So it is kind of like this huge delusion of grandeur kind of thing. Like, I'm supposed to do this. It's about me saving the world.
Which is a very common thing. Like schizophrenia, like I need to do this to save others, or
or I got to do this to stop the thing from coming after me. So there's a lot of mental health issues with that movie that I think Richard Kelly, the director, did a great job of addressing and everything. And
there's like a scene where he's sitting in the movie theater and the bunny suit guy is just sitting right next to him. They're eating popcorn together.
Yeah, and it's a good movie. I mean, it's a cult classic too. This will probably be on the cult classic list that we do. Cult following movies. So it's definitely a great film. All right, what do you got left? You got any more? Or are you all done?
I had like 5 more. I
couldn't come up with any. I couldn't. I was like thinking. I'm like. I probably should have done this weeks ago. Made this list, but it was hard because we had a lot of the same too. So I was like, okay, which ones do I take out? And let you do.
I'll touch on a couple more. I'll just briefly, honorably mention some.
Which are the ones you like the most?
Well, I won't say this is one I like the most, but I would say this is definitely a psychological one. Is the Babadook.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Which the first time I watched this movie, I thought it was maybe just like a paranormal demon movie. I didn't think there was much more to it.
I didn't think it was I thought it was just going to be like a demon movie.
But then doing some further research, I guess there is a lot of psychological themes to it. Essentially, it's about a mom and a son, and they lost the dad, and they did a car accident. And the mom was struggling with being a single mom. Mm-hmm. And her son gets this book, and this creature comes out of the book. He's this creepy-looking, black creature, and his name is the Babadook. And he just taunts the family, taunts the house.
Right. And
the idea is that the Babadook represents, the grief and loss that the family is going through, and it kind of just lingers and follows them and makes their life more difficult. Mm-hmm. Some other themes in this movie for psychology were, parental stress and isolation. I can't begin to empathize or try to understand, but I can imagine the stress it would be if you're a single mom and it's just you and your kid, and you're isolated from the world. It's just the two of you, and you lost the only support system you had, the only help you had.
Oh yeah, no, I can't imagine what
that's
that would be like.
That's gotta be extremely difficult and isolating.
For sure.
And I think it touches a little bit on mother-son relationships and the difficulties there. Mm-hmm. And it uses this supernatural demonic being to represent all of these hardships that they're going through.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I agree.
Which I would not have picked up on first time watching this. I thought this was an okay movie when I watched it. I thought it was kind of funny, to be honest.
I kind of thought it was the son was so annoying. I was like, maybe that's supposed to be the funny part. Is he's obnoxiously annoying to the mom.
I think it's just she's just struggling. I think maybe they make him more annoying because the mom's already struggling. So
just that added level of stress,
He kind of plays it up a little bit more.
Right.
Another movie I did want to touch on was Coherence, which is a very underrated movie. I think we watched it on Tubi. Mm-hmm. I saw it on TikTok, talked about it a few times. But this is a very... God, I don't even know.
That's more I would think that's sci-fi. Wasn't that the one where they were going the meteor goes overhead? And
yeah, so essentially this group of friends, they're at a dinner party, and all while they're at this dinner party, this meteor goes overhead, and... they go next door to the neighbors, and the neighbors are them. And it touches on, multiple dimensions and how there's multiple versions of us in different dimensions.
Yeah.
But the beginning of it is very suspenseful because you don't know at first, you know, that the people at the neighbor's house are a clone of you.
Right.
So there's all these creepy clues and all these things, and you kind of see pictures of yourself in another house, and it's just very...
Oh, yeah.
It's very concerning.
I forgot about that.
Because it's like if you were to go to somebody's house and you see all your stuff there, you're like, what?
Yeah, why is all my stuff in your house?
It's very unsettling and concerning at first, because they're trying to find help. I think the power goes out, they're trying to find help.
Right.
And then, you know, later on you find out that there's... the people at the neighbor's house are them, but you don't find that out till later on.
Sure.
So it's a very suspenseful movie. It's very thought-provoking, I would say. But yeah, it might fall more of the sci-fi category, but I think it touches a little bit on, like, the butterfly effect, too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's... Forgot about that.
Yeah,
that would have been a good psychological movie to put in there.
But yeah, because it's like there's multiple different ones of us in every timeline, and if you do one thing wrong, then it'll mess up different timelines. Like if I were to spill this drink right now, what would it do to me in other timelines, kind of thing. So I think it touches on that as well. Great movie, very underrated. I haven't seen anybody really talk about it.
I love science, like movies, because I love, like, you know, quantum physics and stuff like that talk about different dimensions, higher dimensions and stuff. So anytime there's a movie about that, like, I love that stuff. I eat it up.
A couple of honorable mentions. I put Don't Worry, Darling on here, which is the new movie with Harry Styles and Florence Pugh. I thought that was an interesting movie because it's one of those where, you know, you think the main character is maybe going crazy, and then at the end, it turns out the whole town was crazy, and she wasn't crazy.
It was like a simulation, too.
Yeah.
Kind of like The Truman Show.
Yes, we should have put The Truman Show on here, too. That's a good one.
That's not really horror.
I guess it's not horror.
That's a good one, though. No, we should have put that on there. I think people would have liked that.
The last one I want to touch on, because I think it's very interesting, is it's a Danish movie called Speak No Evil.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very unsettling movie. I know a lot of people won't watch it because of how unsettling it is.
Yeah.
But I think quite possibly one of the most important themes that comes out of this movie is manners and how people feel that they need to be polite to others even when they feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
So essentially there's this family, and I think they're at their vacation home, and they kind of run into these people, and they kind of make, like, you know, surface level friendship with them, invite them over to their house. And it just gets very odd from there, and the family, you know, they get very weird vibes from these people. They don't feel comfortable with them in their house, and eventually they get to the point where they're like, we want you to leave.
Right.
And they take offense to it, and I don't know if it's a very common thing for Danish people to be overly polite, but they take offense to this, and they're like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, I don't want to be rude.
Right.
They let him stay in the house, and they ultimately pay the price for it. But I think that's something... I don't know what it is about humans that we feel the need to be so, like, polite and kind to people in situations where we're uncomfortable. You know, like, if we're uncomfortable, we should just...
It could be, like, human nature, too. You know, it might not just be...
Yeah.
You know, because I feel like, you know, the first thing, like, if somebody does something that makes you feel uncomfortable or mad, you're not going to be like, what the... You know, that's...
Yeah.
I don't think people are going to, like, naturally do that. But I can see where, like, there are a certain point, it's like, okay, it's time to stop playing nice, you know?
Yeah, but I think it's just, I don't know, it's just concerning, because I just could see a lot of people at that point, you know, somebody's in your house, you're feeling uncomfortable, you want them to leave, but you're like, oh, we can't be rude.
Right.
And then, you know, they pay the ultimate price. Like, the worst thing that you could think of in your head, like, oh, wow, what could happen to me if there are these people in my house, happens, essentially.
Right, exactly.
Oh, well, us as humans are more, I guess it's more of like a societal concept, you know? We're all more concerned with just being, not upsetting them and being friendly than protecting ourselves and our family.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's a good movie.
I like that movie a lot. Yeah, it was very good. I can't remember if it was in Danish. I think it was, or German or something like that.
You can get it dubbed over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like a dark comedy on, like, manners and having manners and being too polite and being like, oh, no, it's okay, you can stay with us. And then, you know, they pay the price for it.
Yeah, I can see that. Definitely a good movie, though. Definitely a good watch.
So essentially, always speak up.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, do you want to touch on anything else before we call it?
No, I think I've made all my points. I hope you guys like this movie, or our movie choices, and go check them out. And
until then, stay spooky.
Stay spooky, guys. We'll see ya.